In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Welcome to episode 12 of Andrew and Jerry Save the World. Andrew and Jerry tackle today's fake news. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And we decided to make this one a real catch-all because there's a bunch of stuff that's going on in the world right now and a lot of misinformation. By the way, thank you all for the great response to episode 11, Andrew and Jerry Save NATO, and our interview with Paul Post. A lot of folks have found it helpful. I urge you, if you haven't seen that episode or heard that episode, go and check it out.
We gave Joe Rogan a run for his money.
Listen, you know,
it was Rogan-esque.
It was Rogan, but that's what we want to do. By the way, we're going to be joined today by Jon Justice, who is a radio talk show host on Twin Cities News Talk in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We're going to talk to him about all of this stuff that's going on in the world, as well as, Jerry, I know it's your favorite subject. We're going to be talking about Star Wars with Jon, too, because that's
excellent.
And his books. I mean, he's an author. So we're excited, but also because Jon came up with a really interesting theory about energy prices. We'll get into that with him. In the meantime, let's just go to it, Jerry. Let's go to Ripped from the Headlines.
Ripped from the Headlines.
So as we were talking about this, as we were talking about energy prices, this other breaking story happened, and you spent a lot of time covering it on your show on Sunday, and that is the so-called, I don't even want to call it the Don't Say Gay bill, because that gives credence to how the left has classified it. But right, I mean, Jerry, is there a better way? How do you refer to the bill? And tell us about this and why so many people are getting it wrong.
Well, I mean, what to call it, I'm not sure, other than it's curriculum reform. It's a parental right bill. And the thing is, and I want everyone to do this, you can go to the Florida State Senate. It's flsenate.gov and download this piece of legislation yourself. It's only 7 pages. And it's written like a piece of legislation, so therefore it's not even 7 pages of substance. Yes. There are 3 sections of the bill, really paragraphs, 3 paragraphs that explain with clarity, directly with words, Andrew, what the bill does. And here's what it does.
Hold on. Before we get to what it does, because I want to ping on this. I think we should call it a maintain childhood innocence bill, or maintain elementary school innocence bill, because you're going to get into exactly what it does, and maybe we'll circle back and revisit this. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry.
So, well, again, the reason why I think it's a parental right bill is very simple, and that is the first part of the legislation says that no instructor, third party, or other school administrator will instruct, as part of the curriculum, sexual identity to grades kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Well, that's simple enough, right? Yeah. The value systems around identity politics and sexual identity is something that is it's a value. It's almost a religious perspective, and that should be taught at home. The scary part is that the bill ends there. It does not prohibit such instruction to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, which is to me very disturbing. But then again, the bill goes on. This is the clarifying and most important piece of the bill. It says that any kind of emotional distress or physical distress, that parents should be notified. Yeah. Physical, emotional, or mental distress, parents should be notified. Why, in the name of all that is good, that this has to actually be legislation, tells you the state of public schools. And then, of course, it gets into more specifics, like if there's a health questionnaire, parents should be able to see it before it's given to the children. Again, a parental rights bill. There's nothing in this bill that is anti-LGBTQ. There's nothing in this bill that would prohibit the discussion of these issues. For instance, Andrew, In kindergarten, if little Susie comes in and little Susie, it's a bring your family to school day, and little Susie has two mommies, and then little Joe wants to know, why does Susie have two mommies? The kindergarten class can have that discussion. It's just that it's not in the curriculum. And I know I'm going on. Let me just
no. This is important. This is important stuff.
For our audience. So I interviewed a school teacher.
Yeah.
And I asked her, what's the difference between instruction and discussion? Right? It seems
or
to
curriculum.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And she said it's very clear. If it's part of the curriculum, then she has to, in her classroom, have posters and books. She has to have visual aids that she can point to that promote the instruction. So therefore, she would have to have in her classroom gender neutral dolls or books about binary, cisgender, transgender situations. And again, this is kindergarten. So again, this is common sense. Absolutely. And the firestorm from the left tells us how important this is in terms of legislation.
I mean, this gets into stuff that you and I have talked about in the past. And I've talked about it more on the air. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast, seeing as we're really only 14 episodes in, the regular episodes and the 2 bonus episodes. But you and I have had this conversation over the years about, we had 20 plus years ago, we had the conversation about gay marriage. And you said, this is, I have no problem with 2 people wanting to, and I agree with you here. I have no problem with 2 people who, if they happen to be of the same gender, if they want to engage in some kind of legal construction of a relationship which is like marriage, but the state, and I sort of went further and said the state should be out of it. But what you raised was this issue of how there is the incrementalism, right? And the incrementalism gets to the sort of opening all of this stuff up to children and reducing the age of consent and all of these kinds of areas. And I was skeptical 20 years ago, but yet here we are in 2022, and we're talking about having these discussions in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. And listen, I don't claim to remember everything about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade.
You probably had half kindergarten. I did half day.
I did have half day kindergarten as well. Yes.
So think about that. So when you and I were in kindergarten, and it's not that long ago.
Yes.
It was half day. So it was nap time. It was story time. It was snack time, and then it was home.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to teach very complicated philosophies and ideas like transgenderism to kindergartners.
And that's right. And it's, it's one of those things where, again, talking about protecting childhood innocence,
right?
We start with the story of the drag queen story time, and folks are like, oh, there's no harm. It's just a man who wants to dress as a woman. And
we'll stop there for a second, because there is no harm with grown-ups. I mean, look, we can have a spiritual discussion or a religious discussion. We're not having that in a free society, in a free country. People should be able to organize their lives the way they want to. Right. No. But the problem isn't drag queens hanging out with drag queens or whatever. It is bringing it to the innocence and the undeveloped brain. That's
what I'm saying.
And the underdeveloped and the not yet developed sexuality of a child.
And that's my point, is that it's not, I have no problem. Like, we have a Peruvian restaurant in town. Every Wednesday they have drag queen bingo. And honestly,
I would love to see you in a dress and a pair of high heels.
The guy who used to cut my hair is the facilitator of drag queen bingo.
Andrew, I don't think you and I need to keep clarifying that we have a live and let live.
No.
Respect the dignity of others.
My point. I'm just trying to imagine my elementary school librarian, Mr. Kincannon, having a drag queen in our little library at Juniper Hill.
It's confusing. Why do we want to confuse children?
Again, listen, I was confused enough when Slim Goodbody showed up in his, remember Slim Goodbody with his bodysuit with all the internal. That was enough for me.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway,
but Andrew, you do raise a good point, and we don't have to belabor it. But I said this. I was on last night. I hosted a show last night, 9 to 11, over at WBAL, and I said this. I said this raises the issue of, is there an element pushing for this type of legislation that really is about grooming children?
Well, that's
grooming them.
And this is what you've said before.
Right. And again, this whole thing has been branded as anti-gay or anti-transgender. It's not. And let me say this for our listeners and for you.
And I want to ask you a question about your shows on Sunday and yesterday, but go ahead.
But here's the bottom line. So I was at a big media dinner last week, and I talked to an anchor at a cable news network. And it was after the dinner, and we were winding down, and so it was off the record. And he said to me, Jerry, what's up with you Republicans and this anti-gay legislation in Florida? And I said to him, I said, you should know better. It's 7 pages. Did you read it? Well, and he said to me, I don't have to read it. I trust the coverage. And I said to him, look, I said, I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to argue with you the merits of the bill, but let me say this. Would you be in favor of legislation in Florida or anywhere that would require in the curriculum instruction of the Judeo-Christian sexual ethics? And he recoiled. Of course not. That's religion. And I said, thank you. I said transgenderism, or more broadly and more to the point, sexual identity. This is a belief system. This is not based on science or biology. This is a belief system. So why don't we do this? How about we just say the public schools on these type of belief systems should remain neutral?
And what did he say?
He didn't argue the point.
Yeah. What kind of a reaction were you getting from listeners on Sunday and last night?
Well, I would love to tell you that I was getting thoughtful responses.
Okay.
But no, there were 3 types of responses from callers and from texters.
Yeah.
And texters can be even more over the top in their response. I got the you're just a bigot.
Sure.
Right. To bigoted statements about gay people.
Yeah.
To reasonable people who like my take, and that is, on these very serious moral and religious issues, schools should remain neutral.
We should do a show about faith without faith, right? Or the idea of the secular humanism as faith.
Well, Charles Colson, who was again, I never met the man, but his books and his teachings kind of mentored me intellectually, how to marry your intellect and your spirit, in terms of how to be both a citizen of this kingdom and that kingdom. It was so anyway, but he talked about how secular humanism, because you raised that phrase, is indeed a faith system. It's a religion. And so identity politics and sexual identity falls into the category of secular humanism, which is religion. We shouldn't be teaching religion in public schools.
It's one of those things. I got into it a couple of years ago with somebody to actually bring it full circle back to the Ukrainian-Russian crisis. Got into it a few years ago with someone about the deaths of millions of people in Soviet Russia, specifically Stalin. And I made the statement, and it was kind of an offhanded statement, as I recall, essentially raising a theory, and it was a provocative theory, which is, if atheism is faith, right? The absence of faith is as a version of faith, then weren't the deaths of so many people in Soviet Russia for religious purposes. I don't remember why I said that, but it was a thought at the time. Before we go to Jon, Jerry, let's just shift gears for a second. So we are you seeing any kind of stabilization where you are in gas prices?
No, they keep on going up.
We've seen a little bit of stabilization where I am. A couple of different places where it hasn't gone up nearly as appreciatively as I thought it was going to.
Gas prices have been jumping up every day. I haven't been out. I haven't got gas today, but
Yeah.
I drove by a gas station, a Safeway station that I like, and gas is usually very inexpensive there. And last night it was for regular gas, it was $4.54 and the 9/10. You know what I mean?
I am wondering if the more independent gas stations, right? Gas stations are all sort of affiliated with a major,
Sure.
petroleum company,
It's just, yeah.
but they're they're mostly independently owned and operated, and so I'm wondering how many of them. So a lot of times you'll see that the smaller independent gas stations, some of them they're getting cheaper gas. I'm wondering if they're getting caught on the short end of the stick, because I know, like, for instance, our local Wawa had gas for less expensive. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing too. Remember this: there are lots of places. There's a place up in Frederick that I like, in Buckeystown. Where I get gas, and gas is usually, 50 cents cheaper than other places. But the reason is that the gas is just, what's the economic term? It's a loss leader.
Yes,
and they make their money on their cafe and their market and all the rest of it.
Got it. That makes sense. It's one of those things where I'm thinking about Costco gas and making.
Oh, sure, yeah, right.
Now we're gonna play this. Should we play this now? You called me up this morning, and you were stunned. I'm gonna tee this up. We'll play it now. You were stunned this morning. You were watching Fox, and what happened, Jerry?
Well, I'm watching Fox, and I was kind of overtaken by the silliness of the coverage and such things. They're talking about Ukraine, and they're showing children and Zelenskyy, standing firm and very serious, but with an unserious tone. And I said to Erica, my wife, I said, "Look, God bless Zelenskyy, but we shouldn't be making him into this kind of pop star.
God forbid, yes,
right, a pop star, or this, greater than." And as I'm saying it, a singer from, what's the name of the band?
Five for Fighting, Jon Justice.
Five for Fighting. They say we're going to have right here the debut of a song for Zelenskyy.
Yes,
I thought,
goodness, and here it is. I watched it. We'll play it for John as well, but here we go. Oh wait, is it already gone?
Nothing to see here.
Holy cow.
That's very curious.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
Kevin Sorbo deleted that tweet.
One man can save the world. Zelenskyy can save the world. Again,
wait a minute. I gotta hold on for a second. This is kind of strange.
Well, while you're doing it for our listeners,
go ahead.
I should say something, right?
Yes,
but the bottom line is that, look, we understand Putin is the villain, Russia is the aggressor. I support Ukraine and their fight against this aggressor, but we have to be careful about making saints out of people.
I hope I didn't cause Kevin Sorbo to delete his tweet. I mean, my response is, for those of you who are watching can see this, but I wrote Jeebus, because I don't like writing down Jesus on tweets. I wrote Jeebus. Listen, I love K Sorbs. That's Kevin Sorbo's Twitter account. I love K Sorbs, support Ukraine, and am astonished at Zelenskyy's leadership. But this, and then I linked to the YouTube thing. Well, I wonder if it's gone over. Let's stop the share, and then we're gonna go to the next segment. I wonder, Jerry.
Yeah.
If and I'll have to look while we're talking to John. I wonder if the Five for Fighting song has gone over like a lead balloon, and they have taken it off of YouTube. I
have no idea. It was, again, for our listeners, we understand the seriousness of this.
Tell you what, let's make the jump. We'll explain it when John comes on, because John may have heard the song. But
I'll sing it for you, Andrew, if you want me to.
Now, yes, okay. Now it's time for expert advice.
Expert advice.
Well, welcome to our expert advice segment. I am so happy to be joined by an old friend, a longtime friend, I should say, because he's not that old. Jon Justice. He is a host on Twin Cities News Talk out of the Twin Cities. I've known him when he was doing radio in Arizona. He is an author. He is a podcaster. Jon, you've got a new series of books, right? Have you embarked on a new series of Embark books?
No, I'm wrapping up book 7 in the series. That'll wrap the series up. At least so far, and then I'm torn between starting another series which I have an idea on, or continuing to write stories in my Embark science fiction series. So right now I'm currently at the very end of editing book 7 in my series.
That is, I am so amazed. That is wonderful stuff. The books are great. I think the first 3, so now I clearly need to get caught up on the next 4, or the next 3.
Why don't you clue our audience in on the books?
Well, the books are. Yeah, thank you.
Or either one. No, so I was. I'll try to do the short version because I could take up the entire show talking about this. No, I mean I grew up a big Star Wars fan, and grammar is one of the things that I'm worst at. So I challenged myself back in 2014 to see if I could write a story, and I really wanted to know what it would be like to kind of be like George Lucas. But he ruined it for everybody in creating when he created Star Wars, in my opinion, because you take anything and take it outside of Earth realm and you're kind of just ripping on Star Wars. So I created a story set in the future where bottom line is everybody gets around in space vehicles rather than driving. Flight culture, air and space flight culture has replaced car culture. And I combined all of my favorite genres. So sort of the sci-fi of James Cameron, where he injects a love story with an apocalyptic tale that basically turns into a space opera.
Gotcha.
And at the end of the day, it's freedom and liberty versus tyranny. It's got great, family values themes in it. And I wanted to do science fiction that was more conservative, and an apocalyptic tale that didn't involve climate. It's an industrial.
Sure. Yes. Here.
So the first story is everybody getting off of Earth, and then after that, it's colonization of distant planets and wars and factions and stuff like that. So
love it.
For all ages, written for adults, but kids as young as 12 enjoy it.
Good stuff.
Excellent. That's great. Stuff.
Yeah, and Jon, Jerry is the author of Real Clear Books, so
yes,
this wouldn't be a bad. This is a good connection to make. So, Jon, before we open up the segment, as we were closing our rip from the headlines segment, I had started to play. I wanted to play this morning. Jerry was watching Fox and Friends, and the lead singer of Five for Fighting came on to tee up a new song he's written about Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And I went to go play it because I had retweeted something from Kevin Sorbo. And Jerry, Jon is no stranger to the novelty song, the parody song.
This is not that, though.
Well, no, but it's a novelty song. It is. This is by definition novelty.
Well, when he sang it on Fox News, he sang it like it was a love song.
Well, okay. Well, you can have long songs that are novelty songs. And so I went to go and play it from the Kevin Sorbo tweet, and Kevin Sorbo had deleted his tweet, which was very strange. But here, you get to hear this first. Let me go and play this.
I heard they debut.
Yes, Jerry heard the debut of this. So let's play this. Jon, you can see this. The song is "Can One Man Save the World" by the lead singer of Five for Fighting.
All right.
Who is this comedian? His audience more mice than men. This Superman Ukrainian, I don't know. Great-grandson of the Holocaust, an eastern heart the West has lost. Nail or carry up his cross, I don't know. But he's got everyone thinking.
We'll play a little bit more.
Yeah, he's got all of us thinking. Can one man save the world in 1,000 years? Will they say your name, or is this all in vain?
There you go.
You get the picture. I just shook my head at this.
I mean,
Thank you, Jon.
I'm sorry. And then what the female host on Fox and Friends, is it Rachel Campos?
My friend Rachel Campos Duffy.
Campos, I'm sorry. And she was like, John, not you, John, the other John. John, do you think Zelenskyy has heard the song?
and Jerry was yelling at his TV.
Oh.
No, it's just been released.
I like her too. And
so do I. I mean, I
understand the position that she's in, but I mean, come on.
But what again? You know, part of my criticism of the Biden administration through this Ukraine-Russia war is its unseriousness. I mean, last week the president is still yesterday the president is still talking about purchasing electric cars. He's talking about green energy. He's not, however, talking about what's necessary to aid the Ukrainian people, and also to get us off this myth that there is that green energy is an option for the near future. But he's unserious. And so I watched this thing this morning. I was like, oh my goodness, everyone's unserious, and we need grown-ups back. I hate that phrase, right? That was the phrase during the Trump years. Oh, when will there be a grown-up in the room? Well, there are no grown-ups anywhere.
Well, I'll take something like this. And did you guys see the slam poetry that was done by that actress when this whole thing got started with the if Putin, if I was your mother?
Oh my goodness, no.
Oh, but I'm going to go pull that up now.
All right, you got to find the Putin,
Yes.
If I was your mother slam poetry done by this actress right when everything started. She had put out this ridiculous poem of her speaking into the camera and saying, she would have loved him and held him and all this stuff, right? I'm with you on sort of the, I guess I'll say, cheesiness of it. I want to comment on what you said about this here.
This one?
I want to comment about what you said about Biden, but like for the fight for fighting guy and this person, like I don't personally begrudge anybody.
Of course, yeah, I get it.
And I know you know that. If this is their wheelhouse and this is what they feel like is making a difference, I agree with you.
Sure.
It doesn't do anything. I'm not one to get inspired by songs like this and to think that they can make a big, massive difference. It's just people dealing with it in their own ways. And the same rings true with this.
Let me play this because I haven't heard this yet. Hopefully I can. There's no video. It's just her. Let me find the video.
So while you find the video, if I can comment on what you said about Biden.
Sure.
I had early on in my radio career, I had a consultant, and he gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received in the 26 years that I've been doing radio. And he says, be as genuine and authentic as you can be, and you'll reach the biggest audience you're capable of reaching. Biden isn't genuine or authentic.
No gravitas whatsoever.
No. There's when he speaks, he's not speaking from here at all. He's speaking for whatever was written in front of him, whatever he is supposed to say. He's not acting like a leader. And the moments when we do see genuine Biden, it's ugly.
Yes,
it's uncomfortable. It's ugly. It's mean.
It's dog face pony soldier. It's how dare you question me? Yeah, agreed.
So that's where I see it with Biden. You're right. It's a level of unseriousness, but it's not genuine. It's not authentic. It doesn't resonate with anybody. And I think that on the one hand, what they're doing is not necessarily bad, because I don't want to get into a shooting war with Russia, but I also think it's benefiting their agenda because they can now point to Putin and say everything's his fault.
Sure. Right. Exactly right.
And we're going to get to that in the
but that's part of the unseriousness of this, where inflation is Putin's inflation. Well, it's Putin's gas prices. Well, again, they're gaslighting the American people. But I guess even there, the American people have an obligation and a responsibility not to be gaslit.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's hard. Let's hear this, because I haven't heard this before. This is
who's the actress?
Anna Lynn McCord, former 90210 star, I guess. I don't know. Here she is.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light, Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain. Little boy,
Oh my God. Okay. If she'd been his mother and she'd been so cloying, he would have wound up being like oh God, Norman Bates from Psycho. That's all I can think. I mean, we don't know. I mean, this is the problem that we get into. And I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. When you try to ascribe some kind of mental state to your enemy, whether it is that they weren't loved, right, or whether they're a madman, I mean, it takes away their agency, and it's a whole. You wind up missing the forest for the trees.
Right, but to John's point earlier, this actress won't be in meetings with the Security Council or with members of the Pentagon. I mean, so it's harmless and silly. And again, maybe it makes her feel better. Mm-hmm. But my problem is that I think there are people at the White House with that kind of mentality, and that's scary to me.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, this is what drove them to have the meeting with all the TikTokers last week. Which I've decided I don't think I'm going to play the TikTok video that I pulled up, but this is where we are. John, it's one of those things where you've watched the trends happen. I mean, what is this where do you think this all ends? Normally I'm the one you're asking me these questions, but I'm going to turn the tables on you. I mean, where do you think this all goes?
I think in the grand scheme of things, you're talking specifically about TikTok.
No. Yeah.
No, at the end of the day, I don't think it moves. I don't think it moves the needle much either way.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think it reinforces individuals like us who see this stuff and want to see more resolve, want to see more authenticity, right? And I think for the individuals out there who are the TikTokers who are talking to the administration, they're going to feed it. And you were right, by the way. I didn't think that this was going to resonate, but we already have TikTokers that are out there based off of the talking points they received from the White House. Now, they're talking about these things, and whether or not that resonates with individuals who watch that type of stuff, they're probably already hearing that from other outlets anyways. And so I don't know how much of a difference it ends up making, apart from making the administration, and again, this goes back to the resolve on both sides, apart from making the administration look continually ridiculous by those of us that are watching this, taking it seriously, going, you're placating, you're pandering out there right now. This is not what we need leadership, not TikTokers and YouTubers in the White House.
Yeah. And let me ask this question, because if you're engaged in conflict, and I agree with what John again said earlier about we don't want to get into a shooting war with Russia, at least not over Ukraine. But there are things that we can do in terms of real sanctions, real energy policy, changing our own energy policy. There are things that we can do. So to do these things, you do need the support of the American people. So I understand, TikTok and new media, but they're not using it. They're not leveraging these relationships to rally young people to support aid to Ukraine. They're doing this to leverage a myopic view on climate change and green energy, which is
Jerry. That is a brilliant point. And to sort of underscore it, what Jerry is saying is that while they should be doing this to sort of explain really what's going on in the world and why this is important, instead they're using these meetings with the TikTokers to hide their agenda, to essentially build support for their, using this agenda, using this crisis.
Sure.
John, I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Well, no, I agree, and I think it's it's reinforcing what they're already being fed within the
sure.
School system. I mean, a lot of people are out of the school system, but some of them are still younger and are still going through. But they're being fed this. They're being fed this as well. It's a further extension of the propaganda. Doing that thing with my fingers that the administration is already feeding. And I hope it. I guess I'm probably being naive. But like I said, Andrew, when we talked earlier this week, I was really kind of thinking that this wouldn't make that big of a difference. But, you know, it may just. We've had articles written locally by a couple of teens who are reaching out to their local city here in Minnesota, and they were demanding that they declare a climate emergency in their city because this was the fight of their lives and their futures depend on it. You know, and we read it on the air and we properly mocked it on the air because it was deserved to be mocked. But those two teenagers genuinely believe that. They believe there is an existential threat to their lives because of climate change, and this will further perpetuate that while they push their narrative over this being all of our problems are because of Russia.
So I was on last night. I did a fill-in host job over at WBAL. And again, talking about climate change, talking about green energy, I made the point that green energy, especially solar and wind, it's a myth. It doesn't exist. We don't have the technology. We don't have the grid. We don't have the necessary materials. It's not real energy. It's a myth. And I got these texters texting in. Well, you know, it's a threat, and it's mankind. We're going to be destroyed. And you pose the question, what threat?
Yeah.
Where? And then because I could list off the top of my head the 100 biggest predictions that have never come true. Yeah. I mean, so they keep on saying there's a threat. What's the threat? Because if the state of Maryland just passed a climate action bill because of climate change, it won't do anything except virtue signal for the left, and then for the rest of us increase the cost of our lives. No one ever asks these young people. I don't mean to rant here, but I'll just say this real quick, because I have young kids, and they watch the social media. And even last night at dinner time, my 12-year-old said to me, "Well, Dad, climate change is a real threat." Well, sweetheart, how is it a threat? And then she named 3 things. And I explained to her how her information on those 3 things were wrong. And she was like, "Oh, okay." Again, we can still be persuasive as well. Mm-hmm. It's just that I don't think there's enough of pushback. I know you do it, I do it, we do it, but there needs to be better pushback with just the simple truth. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, but
here's my rant.
Before we get to, John, let me ask you this sort of in that context, because all 3 of us have kids who are roughly the same age. And I know, I can see the anxieties in my kids, right? And they're being spun up. And it's funny because it gets into what what Jerry and I were talking about earlier, which is the Don't Say Gay bill, right? Or the so-called Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. John, are you noticing that young people who are friends with, I think you have your one son, right?
I have 2 sons. I have a 15 and 19-year-old.
Okay, there you go. 2 sons. Are you noticing sort of increased anxiety among your sons and their friends? Are they getting spun up about these issues in a way that we were spun up about things when we were kids, largely the Cold War, whether or not we were going to be nuked by Russia? Silly that we're now facing this again. But are you seeing that, Jerry? Are you seeing that? But John, first to you.
I'm not seeing that. Okay. My 19-year-old is more aware. He pays more attention to this stuff, and but he's also living in the household of a conservative talk show host.
There you go.
Too. So, you got to kind of gauge that as well. And but Kyle, my 15-year-old, he's not discussing these things. He's playing Apex Legends with his buddies and he's not worried about this stuff. And we try to, I don't want to say shield him, but we try to keep it out of the fray because he's
Sure.
15, he's growing up. He doesn't need to be bothered with this stuff. I want to add something though, if you don't mind.
Please.
And by the way, time-wise, if we go a little long, I can go.
Oh, good.
We're fine.
Thanks.
But to what you were saying a moment ago, and I think we even talked about this, we need to go on the offensive more often.
Oh, yeah. Jerry, it's a big thing for Jerry.
Sure.
Right? We need to go on the offensive more often. Unfortunately, conservatives aren't in a good position to go on the offensive because of what a masterful job the left has done.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Everybody. But the next time we get a Republican or a conservative in the White House, they got to do this stuff.
Yep.
And we need strong leadership that's going to be able to ignore the noise that's the noise made by the minority in size of the most vocal of those proponents that are going to toss racist and Nazi out at a moment's notice. We've got to do. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse.
No, but you're right. Look, I have and you probably have the same guests on your shows, but I have, conservative leaders and writers, and and they talk about victories and we're winning, and I stop them. I'm like, no, we're not. We haven't won a major policy battle in this country in 4 decades. We're losing. We've lost. In fact, we've lost academia. We've lost public schools. We've lost. The only thing we have left, to a certain extent, is the church, and I mean the broad church, the military, still kind of, and small businesses. So the small business community.
I mean, and Jerry and I disagree on this, because I do think we had victories in the last administration, and I
battles, yes, not in-depth policy.
Oh,
victories.
listen, are we losing the war? Yeah, probably. But my point is this, and it's an interesting little axiom here, which is that we talk about grown-ups. To go back to what you were saying earlier, Jerry, where, and the left talking about, bringing grown-ups back in, where what we're really talking about is people who know how to get stuff done. And when we had people who knew how to get stuff done in the agencies, in the executive branch, they were able to get stuff done. They were able to accomplish things. Our good friend Eric Hargan over at Health and Human Services, folks over at EPA, folks at Interior. It was when they brought in the amateurs to sort of oversee everything.
But let me push. I get your point, and I agree with you.
I'm sorry to bring you into this this argument.
But I'll say 2 things, and I'll give the floor back. We get things done in the moment, and then someone else comes in and it's undone. Most of Eric's work at HHS has been undone, and it has not continued, from the provider relief fund to some of the private partnerships, the expansion of broadband. It's all been undone. But to the other question, I think this is interesting. You asked about the kids.
Yeah,
my kids aren't spun up about climate change. What they're spun up about is how do you talk about it?
Sure.
Because there's so much pressure to use certain language and to accept certain things. And I think my kids are always a little bit worried. Like they'll have I have a 22-year-old, my oldest. She was over here recently and with 2 of her friends. And politics, we talk about politics in our house. And she's always a little worried, am I going to be persuasive when I talk about these issues, or am I going to be embarrassing? And I think too many of us, I don't think the 3 of us, because this is our profession, but I think many of us, on our side, can't talk about these issues and actually make it worse. And that's part of the problem.
Well, and I'll add to that, because this fits in line with something that I was thinking about a moment ago, and that is, people need to be able to be more like talk show hosts. And what I mean by that is, and even politicians, and maybe I'm being naive, but if you guys think I am, please you'll tell me that you see this, that I'm missing it. But we need more people on our side, conservatives, Republicans, standing 100%. Up and pushing back on individuals that throw out the names and going, I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a racist. Knock it off. Throwing it back in their face and saying, this is not who I am. That is a lie. Too many times I see, and I think that's where we've lost so much of the ground, is there's a fear out there to address what we're being called, for fear that it's going to make us look like we are what we're being called. But until we can sort of regain back and change the narrative back to, we may have a difference in ideologies and our political belief systems, but we're not evil incarnate. And right now, you're not going to be able to get back to YouTube and TikTok. You're not going to be able to reach those people or those kids, because immediately they're going to cast anybody that wants to show them a different viewpoint as being a Nazi or a racist or an evil individual. And the only way we can counter that is to push back on it. And it's going to take time, but we've got to start at some point.
When they redefined racism as no longer being bigotry, but being something else, that's when they could start labeling everybody who disagreed with them as racists, and therefore they could label them as Nazis. I mean, it's essentially, it was a very, it was an elegant way. I don't mean that as a positive thing, but it was an elegant way of doing it. Jon, let me switch gears a little bit because we were talking about the
race theory, right? Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. We were talking about this controversy in Florida, or the controversy that has erupted over what Jerry and I both agree is a fairly straightforward bill, this Don't Say Gay bill. What are you and Drew talking about on your show with this, and what are you hearing from your listeners about this?
There's honestly very in the wake of everything going on, it's kind of just been white noise.
Interesting.
There's been people see how ridiculous the controversy has been around it. Did you see the video where all these liberals were saying gay over and over again?
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's just,
and the memes.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's
ludicrous until Disney CEO comes out and says, well, we're going to fight this.
Right.
And again, I said this earlier in the show. I've been saying this all week on other shows, and that is the CEO of Disney or the men and women who cover this issue. They should read the bill. It's 7 pages. It's only 7 pages, and it highlights in 3 sections exactly what it's going to do. And this is something that if there wasn't a controversy over it, I think 90% liberal and conservatives would be like, oh, this is reasonable.
But that is a perfect example, and I'll make it quick. Bob Chapek, okay, because I followed this whole thing, right? Because I love my Star Wars, I love my Disney, and I followed this whole thing.
Sure.
And I actually have a quick little anecdote in a moment.
Please,
you guys don't mind.
take your time.
It's kind of along these same lines. But Bob Chapek, I think, actually did read the bill, because initially he was remaining neutral on this whole thing. Initially, he was saying that they weren't going to pull any funding. He was kind of just being quiet over it.
Sure.
Moving along. It wasn't until his silence over calling out against it caused the upheaval that he went and switched. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, a pop culture podcast / film, and I was hearing they were talking about this story. And the hosts on the show were under the impression that because he was so late in condemning the bill, that he should lose his position as CEO.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
But I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, hat tip to Bob Chapek.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wasn't an Iger fan, but
Jon, a question to you. So the media host, the podcast host is saying perhaps he should lose his job for not opposing this.
No, opposing it for not opposing it quickly enough.
Yes,
right. But again, it is there's nothing wrong with the bill.
Yes,
there's nothing to oppose. It is a if your child has experienced distress, emotional, physical, his well-being or her well-being is in distress, notify the parents. Identity issues shouldn't be instructed in the classroom. Discussion, yes. Instruction, no. And then lastly, any kind of questionnaires about health before it's given to the students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, before the students receive these questionnaires, parents should be notified. I don't understand what there is to oppose here.
Well, it's because the media isn't telling the truth. And there was actually, and to what I was saying before, there was actually a fantastic video that I saw of DeSantis calling out the media point blank and going over, it doesn't say that, it doesn't say that, it doesn't say that, over and over and over again, doing what I was saying that we need to do. But of course, it got no play.
Yes.
It got no play on any outlet where it's going to get any sort of momentum.
Well, I tell you another thing, Jon, and I'm not sure what happens to you, but Andrew, I think, would say amen to this. And, he and I have received pushback from management in terms of some of the issues we want to cover. Why do you want to cover that for? That's done. Or what do you want to cover this for? You talked about it already. And again, maybe my ratings would be higher if my programs were more segmented. But I like to take an issue like this and drive it through till we get to some kind of conclusion. I don't like to talk about something and then let it go. I like to talk about it until we've talked it through. And like in the church, it'd be like you pray until you have breakthrough. You don't stop praying until you get breakthrough. On these issues, I don't want to stop talking about them until there's been some kind of breakthrough. And I think that's part of our problem, right? There are too many untruths that we just let go because we're going from one thing to the next to the next. I think sometimes we have to sit still and fight the battle we're in.
And with that in mind, let's shift gears and talk about something else. Sorry, John, go ahead.
No. By all means.
No. I was joking. I was making a joke. I was making, but Jerry wants to
somebody,
know.
Somebody tell a joke.
How do you guys? In terms of your structure, you guys will stick with the topic for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on momentum. It depends on
sure.
momentum and what kind of response we're getting from the audience. And I kind of approach each story, sort of with 3 beats. What's my instinctive reaction to it? What are the provocative points from it? And what can we take away from it? I'm very much along the same lines. I'd like to have sort of kind of have an arc.
Yeah.
Sure. Here's why I was interested in it. Here are the details of what made it interesting to me, and here's the provocative point to have at the end of the whole thing.
Yeah, here's the takeaway. Speaking of which, this is actually a perfect segue into this other issue. You and I were talking about gas prices and energy supply, and again, in the very literal sense, the gaslighting of America over gas prices. And you said something really interesting, offered up an interesting theory. I don't want to give it away, but reiterate what you said to me on Monday, your theory about what's going to happen with regards to gas prices in the Biden administration.
Well, I'm driving into work and I'm passing the gas station that I get gas at, and I'm seeing what the gas price is. And actually, it was funny, Andrew, I thought about you because we talk about, things being binary. And when it comes to what we're dealing with right now with inflation and certainly with the cost of energy and gas prices, it's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
It's not, no one can escape it right now. I think you fall on either side on who you're going to blame, but you can't get rid of it. So it got me thinking, well, everybody's sort of looking to November, and the talk continues to be Republicans are going to do well. But at the same time, I'm wondering, well, what is the administration going to do in the interim? They're not going to start drilling, right? They're not going to do Keystone XL. I mean, they're not going to make us energy independent. He's not going to undo all the things that he did, that Donald Trump had put in place that gave us those great years of, low gas prices. So what can they do? Well, what if they were to offer up stimuluses? They declare this energy crisis. They declared this situation we're in an energy crisis. And they say, you know what, to help offset the pain that everybody is feeling at the pump, and they'll probably focus on gas. We'll focus on gas. The energy costs that everybody is feeling, whether it's gas, whether it's home, whatever. And they go and they use the same excuse they made for COVID. It's just money, right? They doled out billions just because people were losing money because of COVID. So what if they rolled this out? And it makes a couple of different. It plays in a couple of different ways. One, who's going to say no? It puts Congress sort of in a tough position. And there's kind of and I think, Andrew, you had commented on this too, but, when do they do it? Do they roll it out pre the midterms?
Yeah.
Or do they hold on to it for after and then propose it to try to get the Republicans to push back on it? But I could definitely see this offering up stimulus because we're in a crisis emergency and here's checks to the American public.
I think they do a little bit of both. I mean, listen, I had thought before that they just do it before the election, but I can almost see them trying to do a double take. Hey, we're going to do it now, and if you vote for us, you get what's behind curtain number 3. Jerry, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, this would be a brilliant move by the administration and by the Democrats in Congress. Nancy Pelosi, right, just last week was talking about how government spending is not driving up the deficit. Pete Buttigieg was just on, I think, this morning or yesterday, and saying the same thing. More government spending does not drive up the deficit. So they're laying the talking points out now for the media. And so, they'd have to wait though. They'd have to do this. They'd have to time this. And they have to get their votes in order because they'd want a little pushback from Republicans so they can use it in the midterms.
Of course, yeah.
But this would be August, they're away. So this is an October surprise.
Do you think it's October? I think that they would even consider coming back, or starting it down over the summer and working it through. So the checks have got to hit before early voting starts, or as early voting is starting.
Well, there's already been articles that have done the math on this.
Yeah.
There was an article that we read that said that that as of right now, every American was going to be paying most likely $2,000 more in gas prices. When you couple that with the price of inflation, you're looking at about $3,000 in total. I don't know if that was per person or per household, but it was roughly around $2 to $3 grand that everybody was going to be paying extra because of the rising energy fuel costs and the inflation costs. Yeah, and it would be, I mean, talk about putting the GOP in a tough position at that point in time. You know, when everybody's feeling the pain and hurting, and all it's going to take is Biden to declare it an emergency.
Yeah, and there's a history here too, right? I mean, in New Jersey, they have what's called the homestead rebate, right? They overcharge property taxes, and so if you are a privileged or a class that they like or want or they want to manipulate, they give you a part of your taxes back, the homestead rebate. So this could be the great energy rebate.
And I'm telling you, see, and this gets back to something that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and what Jon was talking about, and you've talked about, Jerry, in terms of the pushback. We need to start pushing back. The conservative movement, needs to start pushing back on this idea now, and essentially saying they are trying to buy your votes.
Or Donald Trump should propose it.
Well, listen,
and then it'll never happen.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's brilliant.
That
we got to get what's her name? Ellis. What's her name again?
Jenna Ellis.
Jenna Ellis. We got to send her a text message that Donald Trump should propose now a gas energy rebate.
Listen,
you know, I like it in theory, but they have no shame.
Yes.
They have no shame. They'll go and that'd be like the one moment, because this goes back to what we said before. Let's say, and I'm with you on that. Like in theory, it seems like, yeah, they'll oppose it, but they go and say, you know what? He's right. He was wrong on everything else, but he's right on that. And guess what happens? The media falls in lockstep with it.
100%.
They go, you know what?
You're right. Yeah.
He's a businessman. It's a good business decision for him.
Yes. So, Jon, before we let you go, lots of news in the Star Wars world. For those of you who don't know, Jon also hosts, it's still called the My Nerd World podcast, right? Right, Jon?
Yeah, the website, mynerdworld.net.
My Nerd World podcast. So we've got some really interesting things. Obviously, the best parts of the book of Boba Fett, at least in my opinion, were when they brought in the Mandalorian. We've got the Obi-Wan series coming out. We've got talk about an Heir to the Empire series, I guess it's going to be. Are you excited about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I wasn't. I wasn't anybody clamoring for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Like so many people were, and so I kind of went into it. I kind of felt the same way with Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But that first trailer had me hooked. That struck me the same way that seeing the trailer for the Phantom Menace struck me.
Sure.
And the same way seeing the trailer for the Force Awakens struck me. It really they hit all the right notes. I'm somebody that wants to move forward in the Star Wars timeline. I'd rather go beyond Episode 9 and tell more stories. You know, do a 10, 11, 12, and we've been in these other timelines for so long. But after seeing that, I'm like, no. I'll take more. I'll take more of that, please. That looks like it's going to be really, really good.
I've never asked you this. So, did you ever see? There were rumors floating around in the '90s about the Star Wars prequels, and there was a rumor at one point that it was going to be Kenneth Branagh as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Michael Biehn as Anakin Skywalker. And I've always wondered. I don't know if you ever heard that, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
casting.
I think I remember hearing. So there were so many names bandied about. As a matter of fact, if you look at the art book, go real deep here. If you look at the art book for the Phantom Menace, Ralph Fiennes was actually used in the artwork for Qui-Gon Jinn and a bunch of stuff. So
wow,
it's really fascinating when you go and look and you see some of the models that they used in the concept art to compare to what actually ended up happening up on screen.
You think Hayden Christensen has grown as an actor in the last 20 years?
Yeah, I think that was all George Lucas. I really do. If you see him in other stuff, he's done a better job. And this doesn't get said very often, but George Lucas, there was one interview, and I'm actually planning on doing it on a podcast coming up because no one ever talks about it. George Lucas was quoted as saying that the dialogue that he was doing in the prequels was intentionally supposed to be like 30s and 40s dialogue. So when he did the original trilogy, it was based off of all those Saturday morning serials that he grew up seeing in the movie theater as a kid. Your Flash Gordon, your Buck Rogers. So he based the dialogue and what he wrote around what he knew. That's what it was supposed to be, and it worked. And he did it. It was like one interview where he said, "Yeah, the dialogue and the way I wrote those prequels was supposed to be more like 30s and 40s. It didn't work though. That was the. I love those films. Don't get me wrong, but the way that he wrote them was particular to a style that he was trying to achieve. It just didn't translate to the big screen, I think, the way that he had hoped."
Well, there you go. Well, listen, John, we've kept you long enough. Jon Justice, co-host of Justice and Drew on Twin Cities News Talk, author of the Embark series of novels, host of the My Nerd World podcast. Listen, thank you so much for joining us today, my friend.
Yeah, man. Everybody, thank you for having me. And everybody head on over to mynerdworld.net. You can see my podcast there, and you can check out my books there as well, because selling books is hard.
Go check them out. And
if
again,
like science fiction, go buy my science fiction.
Jerry, you should take a look at these, because given the conservative theming,
sure. Well, you know what? What's the most recent?
The most recent book is book 6. It's called Fear the Dangerous Night.
So maybe we'll get someone to do a review or something, and we can post something, and we'll talk later. But I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Anytime.
Yeah,
thanks. And now it's time for our bottom line segment.
The bottom line.
So, Jerry, you're more of a Star Trek guy than a Star Wars guy.
Sure, and I could eat up Enterprise and Star Trek and Captain Kirk and Picard and all the rest of them. I love Star Trek. You know this.
I'm watching Picard right now, and I'm the season 2 of Picard, and there are things I like about it, and there are things that I don't like about it. And again, getting into this, and we haven't even gotten there. They're doing, it's another time travel story, which I have problems with. But it's clear to me that they're going to go back and start spouting a lot of woke ideology, and I'm a little bothered.
And that's my worry whenever I watch things now that I like, because if I'm going to apply a political test over everything, I'm not going to watch anything.
Sure.
And it's funny. So there's a commercial that talks. There's a commercial on that says, "Don't support woke companies." And
the what is it? It's not Blue Rhino.
Whatever it is, regardless,
the Black Hippo or something. Yes,
right, whatever it is. And I was sitting there, and I said to Eric, I said, this is nonsense, because every single company is woke.
Yes.
And if you're going to apply this test, you're going to have nowhere to shop. We're going to have to go back to the barter system with our neighbors that we agree with. But again, there's nothing wrong with different opinions and different insights and worldviews. The problem is the preachiness of it and the hubris of it.
And there is no problem selecting or not selecting a company to patronize based upon the spouse. So I don't know if I talked about this on the air, but I got into it. Everybody knows that I'm a foodie. I used to love a company called Penzeys, one of America's foremost spice makers. And I used to love going to Penzeys. I would go we have a Penzeys shop in Richmond. There used to be one in, where would I go up in the Northeast? Anyway, there was one in Falls Church. And I would go and I would stock up on spices. Well, Bill Penzy, when Donald Trump broke Bill Penzy's brain, and he made it really clear to everybody, if you are a Donald Trump supporter, or if you're a Republican generally, I don't want your business. I'm like, oh, okay, you say it, you don't want it. And a couple of weeks ago, it popped up on Facebook. Bill Penzy, the owner of Penzeys, was on talking about carping about his critics. And I guess in honor of Martin Luther King Day, they were having an all Republicans are racist sale.
Oh my goodness.
And he was carping about his critics. And I decided to write him an email. I said, hey, listen, I used to love your product. And I have no problem with you putting out your ideology, right? But when you tell your customers that you don't want their business, and then your business suffers, you can't say that it's the fault of your critics for your business suffering, right? Which to me is very straightforward. And he actually wrote me back and doubled down and called me a racist. And we went back. I know I'm not supposed to do this, Jerry, but it was interesting. And it was interesting because I was having a conversation with someone whose business I had adored for a long time. And we finally came down to it where he said, well, you Republicans, he started talking about that the John Lewis elections bill and how that's racist because, you know, we should make elections a federal holiday and some people can't get to vote, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And I said to him, you know, Mr. Penzi, just not for nothing, but do you give all of your employees the day off on election day? You know, do you close your warehouses?
Yeah.
Do you close your, and he never wrote back to me. And I thought about poking.
Well, again, and what a great point, because
yeah,
even if, and I have no problem making election day a federal holiday. I have no problem with that. But to your point, though, it's still not going to help workers who work for private companies that remain open.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, yeah, banks will be shut, right? And the government will be shut down, but private businesses will still be open.
I'll give you an example, right? So my, you know, with the exception of Christmas and New Year's, and Thanksgiving, my wife's medical practice is open on all the other federal holidays. Now, when she was a doctor in the military, it was closed. But that's exactly it. Somebody was talking to the
look, Andrew, most small businesses stay open every day of the year.
Yes.
There's one of the places here in town where we get our sandwiches, and it's a small business owned by 3 guys, and he's open. They've never closed.
Yeah.
Now on Thanksgiving, they might shut down at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
On Christmas, they might, but they're open. And
Absolutely.
because and we've talked about this, we've become so rich and so wealthy and so privileged that we forget what it's like that some people have to struggle to pay the bills and to put food on the table, you know, and again, this is why we're arguing over things like critical race theory and transgenderism and whether or not men should compete in women's sports, because we have no real problems.
And this gets into the other part of it, which is it's a corollary to the idea of, if you're a rich person and you think that rich people should be paying more taxes, are you paying more taxes? You always have the option to do this. It's a form of hypocrisy. It starts with your own personal beliefs and responsibilities. You know, Penn Jillette used to talk about this. It's not charity to demand, charity is when I give to somebody. Charity is not when I demand that person A give to person B.
You know, it's funny. It's funny because you know, people know that I go to church and I'm involved in my church, and there are times when I'll meet a more liberal Christian and she or he will say, well, the government should give more to the homeless, or the government should do more for affordable housing. And right away I ask, well, do you tithe? Yeah. And do you give above your tithe? Well, I mean, it's hard to tithe, and it's hard. Well, then why would you demand that others do it? And that's you do it. And you're not a more person. And so if Bill Penzi really is concerned about his workers, working class people generally being able to vote and have the day off to get to the polls on election day, then give your people the day off. Sure. Or get them out of there. Hey, before we end this, Thursday, I was about to say tomorrow. Oh, St. Patrick's Day. Thursday is St. Patrick's Day. And, it's funny. When I lived in the DC area, and especially when St. Patrick's Day was on the weekends, even when it wasn't on occasion, I love St. Patrick's Day for a lot of reasons. We get together. Speaking of St. Patrick's Day, obviously we're in our home studios. Eric is making bangers and mash right now. Is that right? I just got a whiff of it. So Thanksgiving. I was going to say St. Patrick's Day is like a Thanksgiving holiday for you, in a very real sense. Actually, well, go ahead, Jerry. It's more like Christmas. Okay, because it starts. There's a St. Patrick's Day season in our house. The house is decorated. I mean, you come to my house right now from the outside. All right, I'm getting in the car. Well, I wish you would. It's all shamrocks, and the Irish flag is outside. And inside every day you will hear Irish music. You will smell Irish brown bread or soda bread. Erica has made, I think, as of yesterday, 7 brown breads and or soda breads. Plus, she's made soda bread muffins. We've had fish and chips. Yesterday we had delicious. She made brown bread with shepherd's pie. We've had Irish stew. We've had Guinness burgers. We've had all kind. We've already had corned beef like 3 times. And again, for those who are not of Irish descent, remember the corned beef isn't an Irish thing. It's a New York Irish thing. The Irish came to this country, had no money, and their Jewish neighbors used corned beef because it was such a cheap cut of meat.
Sure.
And so corned beef really is a uniquely American Irish holiday. But it's my grandfather's birthday, the 17th.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a big family day. We really do celebrate family. Look, I'll take a drink, you know this. But it's not about drinking or going to the bar. That's not St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day really is about faith first and family.
You know, I used to quip about CPAC, you know, about the old line from Dickens, A Christmas Carol. You want to bottle that Christmas spirit and keep it with you all throughout the year. For you, it's St. Patrick's Day, certainly.
Oh yes, absolutely. And the thing is it's not put on a show. We enjoy this. We've already been, we've already been to the Dubliner. We've been to Bushwallers. We've been to La Hinch, which is a new Irish place that's nearby. We just went to our favorite place, the Four Courts. And again, we're not rich, but especially this time of year, in my mind, going to the Four Courts and giving them my business helps them. The owner is from Dublin, and so we support different Irish things.
We do need to do a St. Patrick's Day show from McLean Avenue in Yonkers.
Oh my goodness! Well, I'll be there on Saturday.
So your plan is you're going to be at the big parade in New York on Thursday.
Yeah, and I just got word. So my uncle Pat, who God rest his soul, just passed away. For I want to say 50 years. For 50 years, he was an assistant marshal of the parade. Wow. And he had a section of the parade route that was his. He patrolled it. He literally patrolled it. And even the police officers would report to him and not reports are the wrong word, would coordinate with him. But it's right where the grandstand is, where the stands are, where in the past we've sat with Cardinal O'Connor. One year my mom sat next to Tim Dolan. So this year my cousin Siobhan, his daughter, has taken his place, which is really sweet. That's nice. And it was a big ceremony where they gave her the sash and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I was on the air last night and I got a text message from her. You know, are you coming to the parade this year?
Are you coming? Yeah. Terry, are you coming to the parade?
Yeah. And so I said, yes. And so she just texted me not long ago saying that she has sashes for my whole family.
Oh, wow.
And tickets for the grandstand. And my kids can go and give out the programs along the parade line.
Nice.
And so it is nice because we're going to go there now.
The grandstand, remind me, where is the grandstand in New York?
It's between 49th and 72nd. So it's in the 60s.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's somewhere, it's somewhere, I forget, it's not at 49th, but it's not in the 50th. It's somewhere in the 60s. Their route where they manage is 49th to 72nd. So it's kind of in the middle of that. But here's the thing, that means tomorrow we got parking.
Yeah.
I mean, we got parking in New York City.
Nice.
I mean,
on St. Patrick's Day.
I mean, literally rolling out the green carpet for us. And it brings back memories. I remember years ago, we went to the parade. I was with my parents, and my parents are older, and I called Pat Conway's, which was on 41st Street and Vanderbilt, and right by Grand Central Station.
Sure.
And the owner was a guy named Ed Creed from Dublin, and I said, Ed, it's Jerry. You have room? He said, of course. And you know what St. Patrick's Day is like in an Irish pub. So we got there. Not only did he have room, he had cordoned off a section of the restaurant for my family.
Wow. That's amazing. I was pulling up a picture of Patrick Conway's.
Pat Conway's not there anymore. They closed down.
It's closed. No, I know.
They closed it down. So there's another place called Connolly's that's on 47th Street, which years ago I'd see the Pogues there. You go there on a Thursday, and I think every Thursday, I want to say this because I believe it to be true, but sometimes your head plays tricks on you. But every Thursday, the Pogues played there.
Wow,
consistently, and so we go down there.
It's like seeing the Talking Heads at CBGB's. In the
exactly.
70s.
Well, I've seen those bands at CBGB's, but
I will tell you, the one thing I miss about living on the shore, and is a fond memory.
Yeah.
Doc's Riverside Grill in Centerville.
The shortest parade,
shortest St. Patrick's Day parade. In fact, it just popped up. It was 10 years
ago. We got to make a bucket list of things, because we always talked about me coming up and doing that with you.
Well, and I
podcasting from there.
I did it 10 years ago. 10 years ago this week, I did it at with the guys from Red Maryland. We did a broadcast.
So St. Patrick's Day, really, it's a time for faith and church. It's a time for family and remembering and songs and singing and all of that. And I just can't wait. We're going to go up. We're going to go up on Thursday. So Thursday we'll be in Manhattan, but my mother's house after. And Friday we're going to be in New Jersey. Probably go over to the Harper Bar in Clifton. But however, Saturday is the big day.
You know, I will tell you something, Jerry. You know how some of our colleagues at the radio station used to do, every once in a while they would get some kind of a tour, go and visit, the beaches of Normandy with this this host. You should put together then again, you don't want to work and have to do that over a St. Patrick's Day.
Sure.
But it wouldn't be fun. Listen, it never more important than this year to do that.
Well, I just a big piece in the New York Post last week. 25 Irish pubs closed down in Manhattan because of COVID. We're going to be up on Saturday. Saturday's the big day. Saturday, we're going to be up in Woodlawn, Yonkers, Katona, and McLean. It's an Irish village. In fact, the first time I brought my kids there when they were little, up to Woodlawn in the Bronx, we parked the car, and my kids were like, "Where are we? Like, what do you mean?" Because it's every house has an Irish green, white, and gold and an American flag, but then the Katona itself has shamrocks and Irish things over the street, and there's the Irish Cultural Center, the Irish Immigration Center, the Irish Food Store, and then there are about 25 pubs and all the rest of it. Now, again, like everything else in New York, things are changing, but Woodlawn is still is a very unique Irish village. We'll be there on Saturday. And hopefully we'll get a chance to get into the Rambling House or Rory Dolan's or some of those places and have a meal.
Wow, it's been forever. Yeah, and I noted when last time I was up in New York, which was a year ago in a couple of weeks, my favorite Irish pub on 46th Street had closed, which was distressing.
Again, not to be too serious, but it goes to this point where and I just put a piece up about Real Clear Health that we chose shaming over science.
Yes.
And because of that, so many small businesses, so many restaurants in particular, so many ethnic immigrant-owned restaurants or first-generation now restaurants closed because they didn't get the loans. They weren't connected. They didn't get the resources, and it's a sad thing.
100%. Yeah. Well, listen, Jerry, you guys travel safely up there. Have a great time. And I say Sláinte, my good friend.
Sláinte. I love it.
I appreciate that. Jerry, you want people to stand firm.
Find the truth, plant your feet, stand firm. God bless you.
And have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please, most certainly, stay safe.